What's up, viewers, listeners of Strange Oddities Podcast? It's another live episode of Strange Oddities Podcast with another exciting guest. Like I say, guys, you never know who's going to drop in on the podcast. That's the premise of the show. It's the idea. You just never know who's going to be on the show. All right, guys, as always, I like to get the boring stuff out of the way, get that stuff out of the way in the beginning of every episode that I do. We have a website. It's Strange Oddities podcast.wordpress.com. I'm working on a new website. You just go on our Facebook page, look up Strange Oddities Podcast on Facebook. I have a link there. It's kind of a work in progress, but it's up and running. I'm working on it, so it's almost finished. As soon as it's done, you guys can enjoy it better than the other site. I like it a lot better. Let's see, what else? Guys, if you want to email me, strangeodditiespodcast@gmail.com. I don't know. I'm excited. It's another week here on Strange Oddities Podcast. Winter doesn't want to give up. So start a fireplace, get warm, watch the podcast, have some fun with us tonight. We're going to be talking about the Jersey Devil a little bit. And we're also going to talk about this gentleman's work in some books that he's done about cryptozoology and also the Jersey Devil. And we're also going to talk about who really discovered America, because that's he's working on some other stuff that involves the real discovery. Who discovered America? There's a lot of controversy of that. So I want to go ahead and bring this gentleman into the show. Here we go. All right. We have Dr. Brian Regal. Welcome to the Strange Oddities Podcast. I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, sure. We're going to have some fun. I want to tell our listeners, Brian, a little bit, if you don't mind, because, those who aren't familiar with Mr. Dr. Brian Regal, he's a historian of science with a specialty in human evolution and its relationship to religion, politics, culture, and American national origin theories. He's interested in ideas and belief systems in the dubious realms of fringe and pseudoscience and questions whether these terms are legitimate. In his research and writing, he takes intellectual historical approach, his history of ideas to these topics. He has written and lectured on the evolution, creation, controversy, racial anthropology, and eugenics at conferences in the U.S., UK. He's traveled all over the world. He's got a few books that he's written. Regal's first book was Henry Fairfield Osborne, if I say that correctly, Race and the Search for the Origins of Man in 2002. Was nominated for 2003 the Vicer Award, which is congratulations for that. That's pretty cool.
Thanks.
And
I didn't win. I was just nominated.
Yeah, nice. Still, that's a great accomplishment either way. And won the 2005 Bella Cornitza Award for the best book by Drew Graduate. And his Human Evolution, A Guide to the Debates, 2005, was profiled in a live Air America radio interview with host Janine Garofalo, if I say her name correctly.
Garofalo.
Garofalo, there you go. Thank you.
I feel so old that you don't even know who she is.
Wow. Yeah. And then, of course, he's, written the book of the history of cryptozoology and the secret history of the Jersey Devil. Again, Dr. Brian Regal, welcome to the show. I can't wait to get into things with you.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, your background and things you've written about and things you do, things that you're into with anthropology and all that stuff you've written about fits into our podcast, the Strange Oddities Podcast. But for those that don't know, other than what I just read to our listeners, how did you get started?
Well, I was always interested in this sort of material ever since I was a kid. I guess every person who's interested in the history of the paranormal and ghosts and UFOs and monsters of my generation will probably all say that we first got interested in this watching In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. That show kicked off so many careers. Probably didn't even realize it. But when I was working when I went to graduate school. You have to pick something to write your dissertation on. And my area, my PhD is actually in modern history and literature, with a specialty in the history of science. Excuse me. And what that means is I can explain to you why evolution is real. I can explain to you the history of the dinosaurs. I can explain why climate change is real, why vaccinations are good for you, and I can do it all while quoting the Romantic poets. So it's I'm kind of all over the place there. But when I was working on my doctoral dissertation on Henry Fairfield Osborn, he was the longtime head of the American Museum of Natural History in New York. He's the guy who sent Roy Chapman Andrews off on the expeditions to Central Asia. He coins the term velociraptor. He coins the term Tyrannosaurus. Very big, largely forgotten today, unfortunately, but very big, very well-known scientist in his day. But I was fascinated by him because he's a kind of person that we don't really see that much anymore. He was a scientist who believed that evolution and science should be taught in the school system, that the country would be a better place the more science that people learned, and at the same time was what we would consider today a Christian fundamentalist. And you don't really see that kind of combination that much anymore. And that fascinated me. Strange religious beliefs, science beliefs, dinosaurs. He had everything. And so, as I was writing my doctoral dissertation, which became my first book, the one that you mentioned,
right,
I was coming across all of this other material about monsters and strange belief systems, and it kind of rekindled things I'd been thinking about for a long time. And so once that book came out, I got offered I got a contract to do the Human Evolution Controversies book. And I decided that because the publisher let me basically do whatever I wanted, I didn't want to write this sort of standard history of human evolution, which usually there's a lot of great books out there on this topic. But they often focus very narrowly on a particular fossil or genetics or something. And I wanted to kind of do the big picture and bring in a lot of different areas. And so I talked about fossils and genetics. I also talked about pop culture and artwork and philosophy of how we view human evolution. And I decided to do a chapter on monsters for it. And I had rediscovered this guy, Grover Krantz, who was one of the few sort of genuine academics, classically trained academics who believed, he was a paleoanthropologist at Washington State University, who believed Bigfoot was real. And when the vast majority of mainstream science did not. And I thought, that how can I not look at this guy's life? And so I wanted to include a bit on him in this Human Evolution's Controversies book. And right when I was starting this, he died. And so I thought, just when I want to go see that, now he's gone. But luckily his family, his estate, left all of his voluminous papers, a tractor trailer full of letters and diaries and notes and scribbles and, all sorts of stuff, the kind of things that historians, dream about finding. And they had given it all to the National Anthropological Archive at the Smithsonian. And so as soon as I found that out, I was on the next train down to Washington, and began going through this material, because historians, that's what we look for. We're always interested in the written record. We look for the letters, the diaries, the rare books, the lost stuff. And so I found out this was a treasure trove that held not just Krantz's material, but he was at the center of the world of cryptozoology in the from the 1960s through the 1980s.
Wow.
And so he knew everybody who was anybody. And so there was material from all those people were in his collection. And so I realized that this was way more material than just one chapter.
Right.
And so I finished up the Human Evolutions book, and I decided to write a whole book just about Krantz and use him as a kind of vehicle to examine the history of cryptozoology. And so that became my book, Searching for Sasquatch, Crackpots, Eggheads, and Cryptozoology.
Yeah, I love the title.
Thanks. Yeah, a lot of cryptozoology people hate it, and let me know about it.
Right. Well, I mean, it's like the paranormal. We can't scientifically prove the existence of ghosts right now with the technology and stuff that we use in the field. So I would take like the same thing with cryptozoology. A lot of it's just like opinion and judgment calls, and it's just, I don't know. It's I would have to think it's like the same kind of thing what we do in the paranormal. But well, I'm glad you brought up dinosaurs. I do want to say, which I'm jealous that you've been to the Smithsonian and you've been to the Natural History Museum and all that stuff. I'm like 45 years old, and I've lived in New York like almost my whole life, and I've yet to been to either two, which is sad.
Well, you have to go.
Yeah, I love that stuff, and someday I will go. I am gonna go one day. Yep. But what is your thought on the recent stuff that came out in articles and media about the new theory of dinosaurs, being that you brought up the dinosaurs and stuff, of them possibly being extinct by a comet rather than, I guess, like an asteroid? But isn't that kind of two in the same? And comet is an asteroid, or not?
Not exactly. That idea has been around for quite a while, because there was material discovered in the ground, geological material of certain kinds of minerals that don't appear naturally on the Earth,
Right.
And that were found right at that boundary layer where, from here down there's dinosaurs, from here up there's no dinosaurs.
Right.
And so it was thought that a comet, some other sort of celestial body hit the Earth, and that's what brought this material with it, and that sort of kicked off a series of catastrophic events which killed the dinosaurs.
Right.
It's probably a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah.
One of the things that people don't realize is that events of a historical nature, of a scientific nature, there's never one cause. There's lots of stuff that goes in that's involved.
Right.
There's rarely ever just, there's this one thing happened, and so that's that explains everything.
Right.
Those kind of easy answers you should always be careful of.
Yeah, like the Big Bang Theory. A lot of people think, it was just the Big Bang, and here we were.
Yeah, it's not like there was the Big Bang and 10 minutes later we're running around the Earth. It's
right.
Now I'm not an astrophysicist, so I can't speak that expertly on it. I'm a historian of science. I'm not a scientist.
Right.
But if we assume that this thing that is often referred to as the Big Bang actually happened, we here on Earth don't appear for another 14 billion years. So it's a rather long interval in between when that happens, and now. So.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. What got you interested? We'll get because we're gonna really get into in depth of the conversation of who really discovered America, because there's quite a few theories.
Okay.
Stuff with that. But what got you into writing about the secret history of the Jersey Devil? A lot of people are still bringing that up these days. They're still investigating to try to prove if the Jersey Devil is real or not. A lot of people do believe it's more lore than anything, because let's face it, there's really not a lot of physical evidence out there of it, except for possible eyewitnesses. But are they genuine? Are they not? But
there's no Jersey Devil.
Right.
Sorry.
Basically, right.
I give talks about this all the time. Not in the last year, of course, because of what's been going on, but I give a half a dozen talks a year to libraries and civics groups, and and I always start off by saying, for those of you who came to this talk expecting me to support your belief that the Jersey Devil exists, man, am I going to disappoint you. Because the Jersey Devil does not exist. There is no sort of horsey thing with wings running around the Pine Barrens. It's all legend. But the real story of the origins of the Jersey Devil, I think, is much more interesting. It's not the story of a kind of emaciated horse wandering around. It's a story which includes the very foundations of our nation. This is a time going on at a time when the first kind of inklings of possible independence by the colonists from the British Empire, people are just starting to think about this. It involves questions of who are you loyal to? Are you loyal to the empire? Or are you loyal to us Americans? It includes the suppression of outspoken women. It includes the elimination of the native people. It's got a political angle. It's got Ben Franklin. It's got a cross-dressing royal governor. It's got all this stuff in it that slowly but surely contributed to the story that people now think they know. The other thing I always tell people is everything you think you know about the Jersey Devil is wrong. It's not the story you think it is. And so some years ago, right after Hurricane Sandy came through, I'm sure out on Long Island, you probably had lost power. Here we lost in my neighborhood. We were out of power for a week. We couldn't even physically get out of the neighborhood for several days because so many trees went down.
Right.
And so when all that was over, I had a lot of TV watching to catch up on. And I was watching TV, and it was one of those shows. I forget which one of the monster shows, and they were doing a segment on the Jersey Devil, and I remember thinking, this is such crap. They're just rehashing the same garbage over and over and over again.
Right.
And the next time I was on campus at Kane University, where I work, I ran into one of my colleagues, Frank Esposito, who just retired, who is our professor of Native American history and New Jersey history. And we got talking, and we were talking about this. And almost at the same time, we said, why don't we write a book on the Jersey Devil? And so that's what we did. We sat down and we looked at the literature. We did what historians call a review of the literature. We went out to see what's been written on this already. Is it any good? And so we did that, and we decided there's no one has ever done a proper historical examination of this topic, and so we just did what historians do. Yeah. We went out and we started scouring the archives from Washington, D.C., from Baltimore all the way to Boston, looking for anything and everything, papers, mentions, whatever, because that's what historians do. We scour the written record, and then we get this material and we analyze it, we digest it, we try to put it into historical context, and we saw that. I'm sorry.
You guys do real research.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm trained to do. That's what we're trained to do. And a couple, 2-3 years went by, and bada boom, bada bing, bada bang, we had a manuscript. And we found a publisher, Johns Hopkins University Press, very prestigious scholarly publisher, and there we were.
Nice. Congrats. Yeah, everybody's going to be very surprised on this perspective of the Jersey Devil, but I think it's a great perspective coming from a historian to really dig deep into the history, the correct history of what took place around that time period. I think that's a great idea.
And people seem to like it.
Yeah, well, that's the main thing. I mean, you want to put out something people like too. But again, you're right. The people do kind of rehash the Jersey Devil over and over and over. And it was funny because like when I contacted Dr. Brian Regal, he was like, he's like, yeah, it's been like done over and over. What else you want to talk about? I said, what else are we going to talk about other than the Jersey Devil? Because it's again, like I said, it's just lore, and if you do the proper research, you're gonna find out. You're gonna get disappointed. It's just it's just a story, and but we're gonna be talking about who discovered America. Many people I know from when I was a kid in high school, they all taught us, Christopher Columbus. He was the one who discovered America. Met with the whole Pilgrim thing, and then we had Thanksgiving and all that, all that good stuff. And then you have many years later, here I am, 45 years old, and they're still discovering stuff about history that's rewriting history. And a lot of the Viking history is really fascinating. And I have here, I don't know about what you're involved with your new projects and book that you're writing, because I know you had mentioned that, which is why we're going to get into this conversation. But Viking Leif Erikson is somebody who's a big prominent figure that they believe also could have been one of the first ones to discover America. What's your thoughts on Christopher Columbus, and your thoughts on Leif Erikson?
Well, Leif Erikson didn't exist.
Right. Right.
I am just stabbing this whole thing full of holes here tonight. Leif Erikson, the character of Leif Erikson appears in a series of medieval Icelandic manuscripts,
right,
that are collectively known as the Vinland sagas. And the term saga is just the sort of Norse word for story, oral tale. And these things started off as oral traditions way before they ever got written down. And so it tells the story. The Vinland sagas tell the story of Leif Erikson, his father Eric the Red, his homicidal sister Freydis, and they go to Greenland, and then they wind up wandering around and west of Greenland, and they find a couple of places they call one Markland, and then they find a place that is kind of nice, the weather's sort of nice, and good vegetation, and they call that Vinland. And so this is the story that as it's told in the Vinland sagas. And what most people don't know about the Vinland sagas is they're actually a very tiny piece of these Icelandic texts that were written down about a century or so after these events were meant to have happened. And one of the frustrating things about the Vinland sagas is the amount of detail that's not there. It's a lot of vague references to lands to the west, and we traveled this many days, and it really wasn't thought that this had anything to do with America until about the 1600s, when some Icelandic and Danish scholars began saying, wonder if this is referring to, because it's kind of up in that area there. Maybe they got to America. Maybe that's what this is all about.
Right.
But there's no record of any of these people outside of the Vinland sagas. Now, we do know that Norse people did make it to North America. That's beyond dispute. Up in Newfoundland, a place called Lanso Meadow, a Norse settlement, what's left of the archaeological remains of a Norse settlement, were discovered back in the 1960s. So that's really beyond doubt that Norse people did get to North America 400 or 500 years before Christopher Columbus. But we don't know any of their names. And that it might have been a guy named Leif Erikson is a bit of a long shot.
Right.
It's a very romantic story, but it's probably just that, a story. And if you know anything about traditional Icelandic saga telling, storytelling, this thing fits right in. It's almost a stereotype of the adventurer who goes sailing to an unknown land and has adventures and all that sort of thing. It's right in there in that kind of Icelandic, Scandinavian tradition of adventure stories, and so. But whether or not, I mean, maybe we may discover texts that are unknown now. We may discover them, and it turns out, oh, Leif Erikson, Eric the Red, they really were people who lived and did this. But at the moment, they're just sort of literary figures, like, Lizzie Bennet from Jane Austen.
Right. No, you're right. Do you think it's possible the Vikings, because they were, I'm very much into the Vikings history and stuff.
Okay.
Do you think they've had any possibility of hitting North America at all?
Well, Newfoundland is considered North America.
Right.
Now, whether they were in the United States, again,
you're reaching, right.
At the moment, there's no evidence. We may find it in the future.
Yeah.
There were quite a few people who believed that when Leif Erikson came to North America, he comes much further south. In fact, there's a whole literature about how Leif Erikson makes it to what is today Boston, and creates a city near present-day Boston. Again, no evidence for it. A lot of conjecture, a lot of wish fulfillment, but no actual evidence. And until that evidence appears, we have the evidence for the Norse settlement at Lanso Meadow. That's pretty much, for certain. There's really not that much doubt that they were there. Any further south than that, we don't have anything right now.
Right. What's the how far back does the dates go with that Norse settlement that's been discovered?
I think they've dated that to like the 900s AD.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Columbus does make it to the New World. He does actually get over here several times. Actually, most people, when they think of Columbus, they always tend to think of that first trip, and that somehow that was it. But he actually comes back 3 more times after that.
Wow.
And to the Caribbean, he never knows that North America is here. And in fact, he doesn't even think he's in the Americas. He is, when Columbus goes on his trip, he thinks he's figured out an easier way to get to Asia.
Wow.
This was a money-making deal. If Europeans could get to Asia and open up that market, they could make a fortune. Because what little Europeans knew about Asia was that it was this big, sophisticated society, lots of people, and lots of money.
Yeah.
And if we could just tap into that, so that's why he heads off on this trip. And when he lands in what we now know as the Caribbean, he thinks he's in Asia. And he always insists, people try to tell him for years, you didn't get to Asia, you got to this place, this sort of new place to us. And he insisted, no, I was there. You weren't there. I know where I was. I was in Asia. And he goes to his deathbed believing he had gotten to Asia, when obviously he never got anywhere near Asia. And so, so he sort of gets, and this is way before anybody has any idea about anybody else having come here. But you see, the problem with saying that Christopher Columbus discovered America. That's a really problematic thing to say, because you can't discover a place where when you arrive, there are people on the shore watching you arrive.
Right, exactly.
The native people, they knew where they were.
Yeah.
They didn't need this guy to come over and tell them, "Oh, I've discovered you."
Yeah.
There have been the oldest, widely accepted dates for when the ancestors of the native people, the Aboriginal people, made it here to what we now call America, is somewhere around 15,000 years ago. There is more controversial evidence, not yet totally accepted, that they may have gotten here as much as 30 or 40,000 years ago. And so the question of, who discovered America, the native people discovered America, the Aboriginal people discovered America, the people we call Indians, they discovered America.
Yeah,
They're the first ones here. They were the first humans here. So everybody else comes way later.
Right.
So, the simple answer to who discovered America, the ancestors of the native people discovered America.
Yeah. Amen. It's funny because people don't think about that. It's like, because of what we've been taught in literature, as growing up in high school and stuff, and what they teach you in education. When we were younger, that history was much different from what it is now. And, like I said, they keep rewriting history. We keep finding out more and more things. And, I mean, the Indians were there first. They were always there first. And, I totally agree with what you said.
Well, the one thing that often gets people a little upset, you'll hear this term thrown around, revisionist history. Oh, you're just doing a revisionist history. All history is revisionist history.
Yeah.
We know things. We know what we know today because of what we know today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we might learn some new things, and so we revise what we know. That's how this whole thing works. Don't hang on to stuff that's 500 years old simply because it's 500 years old. The reason why we know now that Columbus was not the first person here is because we found evidence that he was not the first person here. Right. I wrote an op-ed. I do a lot of op-ed writing.
Cool.
And I wrote an op-ed for Columbus Day a few years back. And I got such hate mail over it because what I said was, I didn't say Columbus was a bad person or anything. I just said there's all these other legends and, about these other people getting here first. And a guy who was like the head of some Italian American association in New Jersey wrote to me very angry and said, I was a terrible person because the op-ed that I wrote proved that I hate Italians. And I said, how can I hate Italians? I love pizza. So whenever you hear something going on very angry about revisionist history, they don't know what they're talking about. They use that as a derogatory term, but all history is revisionist history. As we find out new things, we rewrite things, we get new appraisals of things. Sometimes our positions change, sometimes they don't. Sometimes when we find new information, it confirms something we thought already. Sometimes when we find new information, it totally changes our view of something. But that's the way it works. That's why I love being a historian, because this is how this whole process works, and that's the way the process should work.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. You've traveled all over the world. What are some of your most memorable things that you can mention on your travels? What have been your most memorable visits to some of the spots that you've been to around the world?
Well, I have a genuine Russian submariners cap.
Nice.
In my collection that I that I won from a Russian submariner. This was years ago when I was stationed in Western Germany. wound up in a West Berlin bar at 3 a.m. doing that knife and the fingers on the table thing, you know. And he wanted my black tanker's beret. I wanted his black submariner's cap, and so I wound up with the submariner's cap, and I got to keep my beret. So that yeah, and I kept my fingers. Yeah, so that was fun. That was interesting, interesting experience. But yeah, I've traveled a bit, been all over the States, been all over Europe, England, North Africa. It was Egypt. I've been to China. That was fun.
I bet. Yeah, it's always cool to meet somebody who can travel that many to that many countries around the world, such as you have, because I'm sure you have so many great stories to tell from the places that you've been.
Yeah, I when I was in China, I wound up on Christmas Eve of all times with a few friends. My school, Kean University, we have a campus in Wenzhou, China, which is a coastal city down South China, and we were there over our holiday break, and me and a few other of the faculty members wound up at this little backstreet bar in downtown Wenzhou. Wenzhou is a big city; it's like 9 million people. It's like as big as Chicago.
Oh wow!
And we wound up at this tiny little dive bar on a back street, on Christmas Eve. 3-4 Americans come stumbling in, and the I guess the owner had all these old instruments for like decoration hanging on the wall, and one of them was an accordion, a little accordion, and I can sort of kind of play the accordion a little bit. And so I took the accordion down and I strapped it on, and at first the guy was like, "Oh, don't touch that," and I started playing it. And he's, "Oh, okay." And so I wound up at midnight on Christmas Eve, 2014, playing a Bruce Springsteen song, Asbury Park on the 4th of July, on the accordion on Christmas Eve in Wenzhou, China. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool to play a Bruce Springsteen song on an accordion. I can't do that, so I'm so guys, if you're tuning in late, I just want to, we have some people popping in and out, some live viewers that just came in. Want to let everybody know we're talking to Dr. Brian Regal. He's a historian. He's got a few books out: The Secret History of the Jersey Devil, The History of Cryptozoology. He's got quite a few other books available. I got his bio here. He currently works at Kean University. I've actually been to Kean University.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was one of the first investigators to investigate Liberty Hall, the museum.
Oh, really? Yeah, we have the university just built a purpose-built history center, which is right next to Liberty Hall. In fact, now we call it the Liberty Hall Academic Center. That's where my department, the Department of History, that's where my office is, and our special collections is in there. And yeah, well, when I can't do it this semester because of what's going on.
Right.
But I'm teaching my course on the history of pseudoscience. In fact, I was just doing it right before I came to do your show. It's Thursday night class, and back in the before time when we actually were meeting in the classroom, one of the things we would do over the course of the semester is I would take the students on a ghost tour of the Kean University campus, and so, but we can't do it this semester because COVID and all that.
Right.
So I'm hoping by the time the next time I teach the course, we'll be able to go back to doing the ghost tour, and Liberty Hall is part of that.
Right. Very cool. What's it been like for you as a professor / teacher to deal with the pandemic and the whole remote learning thing? Have you been doing that with the university or?
Yeah, well, it's a new experience. All of this semester and last semester, our whole program went online. We have to keep going. We have to keep classes running. but we
Yeah.
can't bring. We don't want to take the chance of bringing students on campus,
Right.
and so everything was being done remotely. And it was a new adventure for all of us. I'd never taught online classes before. Most of my students never took classes online before, and it was a pretty steep learning curve. But we muddled through. We made it work, and this semester we're doing mostly online again. One of my Tuesday night freshman class is meeting face to face on campus, and we everything is socially distanced and everybody's wearing a mask. And here in New Jersey, because people are wearing the masks and doing the social distancing, the death rate has dropped, the infection rate has dropped, the vaccination rate is going up. And so I'm hoping that for the fall, we'll be mostly back on campus again.
Yeah. No,
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Prayers and fingers crossed here. We're actually, I'm a security guard for a high school, and so we've been dealing with the same thing at the high school, and the teachers have had to do a lot of remote learning, as well as the students not being able to go to school for a full in-school day. They've been rotating schedules, and finally next week, this upcoming Monday on the 8th, they're going to be slowly and gradually returning more students in person.
Sure.
At high school, things are starting to get a little better, like you said. And but I feel bad for the professors and teachers, because a lot of work has been dumped on their lap, because for so long you've been trying to get used to the challenges that you have as a professor and teacher of doing remote learning and teaching, and then now to have to revert back again, like later on, after getting used to everything. Some of the teachers
but you that's part of the job.
Yeah.
You adapt and you move on.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like I tell everybody, we'll get through it like butter. So you just got to keep the faith, keep pushing forward.
Sure.
But you know what? Things always get worse before they get better. So hopefully there'll be a positive light at the end of the tunnel. So, but what's on your bucket list for being a historian, and all the books you've written? Have you have anything in the works?
Well, the book I'm working on right now is the one about the myths and legends of who really discovered America. That's my current project.
Right.
I'm about 3/4 of the way through that one, and so now I'm beginning to think. I'm one of these people who's got like 3 projects going at once, and I'm thinking about writing a book on the history of pseudoscience, sort of a big, broad overview of that, and we'll see. I'm just beginning to sort of work up some proposal ideas, and how do I want to approach it? What sort of stuff do I want to have in there? So it's a process. It's a creative process, and but that's what I'm working on right now.
Right. Cool. I'm glad you brought up pseudoscience, because actually we were talking about that on a podcast last night that was brought up, because that's used broadly a lot in the paranormal, pseudoscience. And what's your take as a historian with pseudoscience? Because I think a lot of people have a lot of misconception about what pseudoscience is and how do you refer to it, terminology, as far as paranormal goes.
Well, in its most basic form, pseudoscience is any sort of intellectual endeavor which purports to follow the tenets of how science is done. And it looks sort of like it up front, but when you look at it more closely, you realize that it isn't. The analogy I always use is like, astroturf, fake grass. At a distance, it looks like real grass. But once you get up close to it, you realize, well, this isn't real grass at all. It's something else entirely. And that's what pseudoscience is. It's something which looks like science, but doesn't. So, or isn't. So things like ghost hunting and, cryptozoology, astrology, these are all things which are normally considered pseudoscience because You can't. The way science works is you measure things, you quantify things, you record things, you test things, but you can't test a ghost. You just because you wave a temperature gauge around doesn't mean, oh, the temperature went down. That must mean a ghost is here. That has nothing. Based on what?
Right.
There really is no way to tell if a ghost is there or not. Ghosts are an aspect of metaphysics rather than science.
Right.
And one of the problems we have with ghost hunting in general is that what is a ghost? We're the course that I'm teaching right now, the history of pseudoscience. We're about to, next week is midterms, and when we come back after that, we're going to launch into ghost hunting. And one of the questions becomes, what is a ghost?
Right.
And when I ask people that, they'll usually give you, well, it's a disembodied spirit. Okay, what's a disembodied spirit? Well, it's the spirit of a dead person. Well, what's that? You can't just keep throwing words at me that you don't have a definition for. Right. And since you don't know what a ghost is, how can we look for something you don't know what it is?
Right.
How can you possibly come up with ways of searching for something that, now, that doesn't mean this thing that we sort of nebulously think of as ghosts doesn't exist. We might find out in the future that they do.
Right.
But right now, we have no idea. People have been doing this for a long time.
Yep.
There's no evidence of it. And we don't know what this is. We don't know how to track it down. We don't know, just sticking an infrared camera in the hallway of an old burned out building isn't really going to get you much.
Right.
So that's one of the things that always sort of frustrated me about that series, Ghost Hunters, the guys from Providence.
Yeah.
And, I used to watch that, and it was on for a long time. It was on for like 10 years.
Yeah, it went on for a long time.
It used to drive me crazy because I'd be sitting there saying, you're asking the wrong questions. What happens if you're a ghost hunter, okay? And if you're out, I'm going to go to this old building. I'm going to go to this old, mansion or whatever, this part of the woods that people say I'm going to go out there. I'm going to look for ghosts. What does that even mean? If you see a ghost, if we say someday, oh my God, that's a ghost.
Right.
Real. That has huge implications.
Right. Big claim.
That means there is some sort of afterlife.
Right.
Who gets to be a ghost? If you are a ghost, do you have to sign up with put your name on a list and say, next week I really want to go back. There's this guy that was really mean to me as a kid. I want to go back and I want to haunt,
I have a lot of people on my list I want to haunt when I'm in the afterlife.
yeah. So we'll find out, but does anybody get to be a ghost? Do you have to be a certain religious persuasion? Do atheists get to be ghosts? And these are questions that never get addressed by these ghost hunter groups. There are real implications. If you really think these things are out here, then you have to engage with this idea of what is the meta meaning of the existence of these things, because it's huge.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're there. I've never seen a ghost. I've had students come up to me and say, oh, you're wrong, professor. I saw my dead grandmother. What am I going to do with it? There's no comeback for that. Okay, great, cool. But I've never seen a ghost. I've never seen a UFO. I never saw the Jersey Devil. I've never seen anybody spontaneously combust. All that cool stuff. Never seen any of it. I'm still waiting for a ghost to contact me. I wrote an article a few years back for this British magazine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Fortean Times. If you're in, you got to know about the Fortean Times. I'll just put a plug in there for the guys helping. But I've written articles for them. And a few years ago, I wrote one called "Where Have All the Werewolves Gone?" And I looked at how people used to believe in werewolves a lot, and that belief sort of peters off as belief in like Bigfoot and Sasquatch grow. And so part of what I argued was that the role of the werewolf has been taken over by Bigfoot. People don't think about running into werewolves anymore. Now they think about running into Bigfoot. And I got this really angry letter from a woman in Brooklyn who said, I didn't know what I was talking about. Werewolves are real, and I should be careful having said what I said, because the werewolves might get angry with me and do things. And at the end of her letter, she said, the reason I, being her, know all this is because she is a werewolf herself.
Oh man. Oh boy. I knew that was coming.
So, okay, cool. Great. Yeah. What else?
I can't imagine the letters that you probably get.
Yeah, I got a lot of crazy mail. I got a lot of hate mail.
Yeah.
Because I write a lot about controversial topics,
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm involved in the paranormal. My key thing is, if we ever get that holy grail, which is what we all dream of, let's face it, that's why we're all in it, because we want that evidence. We want that, that one piece of evidence that's going to wow the whole entire world. But when you get that evidence, how are you going to study that evidence? How are you going to replicate it? How are you going to apply the scientific method? And, how are you going to capture something that's supposedly, like, if it's an apparition, how are you going to contain an apparition? How are you going to replicate an apparition over and over so that you can test it over and over? If you get my drift.
Sure. No, exactly. And one of the things, I've been looking at people who do this sort of stuff for a long time, and mystery hunters, if I could just use that sort of as a broad term, right. Ghosts, monsters, whatever. Mm-hmm. There's this idea that you can find one thing, and if you find this one thing, you're going to break the whole world open and prove all this stuff that you're trying to prove. But that's not the way it works. That's not the way science works. That's not the way history works. We don't build our knowledge of the past upon one or two little letters. We build them upon huge amounts of stuff. I as you pointed out, I've traveled the world. I've been to libraries all around the world. I've investigated stuff all around the world. And it's fun. I love doing it. But the vast majority of the work I do is not quite so romantic. It's sitting in libraries. It's sitting in archives for hours and hours on end, going through reams and reams of letters and diaries and box after box of archival material. And what historians do is we slowed up this mountain of evidence, and the mountain that I put together, we add that to the mountain that you put together, and then we take your mountain of stuff and we add it to the mountain the other person did, and we just keep mixing these mountains together,
and then you get a bigger mountain.
Yeah, and what that does is that's how we get this detailed knowledge of what went on in the past. It took me about 5 years to write the Sasquatch book. And the vast majority of that was sitting in dusty archives. And when Frank Esposito and I wrote the Jersey Devil book, same thing. It took us about 4 years of traveling to archives and going through material. When we were working on the Jersey Devil book, I went to England because the book is largely about this guy Daniel Leeds. He's the Jersey Devil. He's what's going to become the Jersey Devil. And he was a Quaker in the late 1600s, early 1700s. From England, comes to America. It's a whole long thing. But I tracked down where his mother had died of smallpox right before the family come to America, and she was buried in the Quaker cemetery in London. So I traveled, got on a plane, and went to London. And eventually find myself standing in this tiny little, what, if you didn't know, would have looked like an abandoned parking lot, overgrown with weeds and things, but had at one time had been a Quaker burial ground. No headstones, because at the time the Quakers didn't believe in having headstones, and so I'm standing in this, half paved over space with piles of garbage in the corner and tin cans and newspapers, standing over the grave of Mary Leeds, the mother of Daniel Leeds, the Jersey Devil.
Oh wow!
And when you do stuff like that, it can get kind of emotional.
Yeah.
Because this person's just a few, what's left of this person is just a few feet below you, but that's how we do this work. We dig out these tiny bits of information here and there and everywhere. No one little bit is going to blow the roof off.
Right.
The roof gets blown off when you build up a huge amount of material that can give you, allows you to look at a person's life or historic event or something, a period, with as much detail as possible. And that's how we learn about the past. That's how we solve these mysteries.
Right. And you know what? I'm impressed. If I was a student, I'd want to be in your class because I love the way you explain stuff.
Thanks.
I love the way you educate, like your analogies.
Oh, that's my job.
Yeah. You can hear the passion in your voice, and I just love that. What student wouldn't want that kind of passion from their teacher?
Hey, you got me.
Yeah. But Kane University is a really cool university. I like that university.
It's a great school. Yeah,
really cool. But I can't believe we've been through an hour already. It's like freaking 9:00, and we've been talking about a little bit of everything here. What do you got coming up? You want to share anything? Any events? You want to share, like, maybe where people can reach out to you? You have a website?
Yeah. Well, if you just Google my name, you'll get my university webpage, and that's got a lot of stuff about me. A lot of my you can find my books there, op-eds that you can download for free, articles that I've written. I had an article come out over the summer, which is part of the Columbus Project, about this really interesting woman, Nellie Horsford, who was a late 19th century proponent of the Leif Erikson Discovered America school of thought. And so you can read that there. You can download it from my webpage. And I've been on a number of TV shows. There's one supposed to be out on Hulu in next month. Well, I guess it's March now, so I can't say next month, this month sometime. I think it's called something with Sasquatch in the title. I don't know, because I was filmed for it like almost 2 years ago. And they didn't know what the title was going to be at the time. And, so if you're a Hulu watcher and you see a new series on Sasquatch, I'm in that one somewhere. So you can find me in that. There's other ones that I've been in that you can find on I think they're on Hulu as well. But I'm a talking head. I'm not the host. I haven't graduated to being the series host yet. I've been talking head on a number of them. So they're out there. All my books, you can get all my books on Amazon. They're all in paperback. At least the Jersey Devil book and the Sasquatch book is in paperback. pretty affordable. And so so there's all stuff out there. You can, if you're interested, you can read my work pretty easily.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll highlight all that, of course, on the Strange Oddities Podcast
Great.
Facebook page. And you can always rewatch this particular episode with Dr. Brian Regal and get all that information. Again, if you missed the live show, it's always up on YouTube, so you can always check it out whenever you have free time. Well, Dr. Brian Regal, I want to thank you again for being a really awesome guest on Strange Oddities Podcast. I hope I was a good host. Hope you had fun. I know I did.
Yeah, I did. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Be well. Good luck in your future endeavors. And
thanks, you too. And if you want me to come back on again, just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to have you on in the future. I always try to keep in touch with all my guests. All right.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I'm going to hang up on you, and you have a great night.
Great. You too.
Okay. All right. Take care. All right, guys. That was Dr. Brian Regal. I hope you guys enjoyed our guest for tonight's Strange Oddities Podcast. Again, you can check out his bio on Kane University website. Just all you have to do is really Google his name, Dr. Brian Regal, and also look up The Secret History of the Jersey Devil, and also his other book, The History of Cryptozoology. In Kane University, his bio will pop up, and it'll guide you to all that information. Hope you guys enjoyed him. I know I did. I had a lot of fun. Next week, guys, announcement for next week's guest. I have Chris Roxburgh, a well-known diver, widely recognized in Lake Michigan area. He's a diver that dives in the bottom of Lake Michigan, and he's a really cool underwater photographer and takes pictures of all these famous historic shipwrecks. And it's really cool. So I can't wait to speak with this gentleman next Thursday, which is, I believe, what's next Thursday? I'm going to look at the calendar now. It's March 11th. So on the 11th, I'm going to have Chris Roxburgh, widely recognized historic diver of Lake Michigan. And I can't wait to find out all about him and all the cool stuff that he's discovered at the bottom of the lake. There's so many historic shipwrecks at the bottom of Lake Michigan. Where do you begin? There's a lot of stories and legends there. Want a quick couple of shout outs. I saw Philip Wyatt in the chat. Want to say hello to Philip. Thanks again for having me on your podcast the other night. Guys, check out his show, Ghost ED, Ghost Education 101. He's got a podcast, I believe. We did it last night, so I would assume every Wednesday night. I think they try to do it every Wednesday. So I want to direct you guys to them. Let's see what else is going on. March 25th, guys, I'm going to have the Holzer Files come back. Not only is Dave Schrader going to be on again, I have the whole entire Holzer Files team going to be on the Strange Oddities Podcast March 25th. So I hope you guys can join us that night. It's going to be really cool to have Alexandra Holzer, Shane Pittman, the psychic Chrissy Kaza. We're going to have Gabe Roth, their researcher, and I can't wait. It's going to be a great night. Want to wish everybody well, be safe, and have a great night. I'm going to play our video here, and I wish everybody well. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Strange Oddities Podcast. You can listen to the rebroadcast on the KGRA Radio. Check out kgraradio.com for the rebroadcast at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, 11 p.m. Pacific Time. You can catch the Strange Oddities Podcast live every week at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Please follow our YouTube channel for our live weekly show at 8 p.m. If you like the show, please give us feedback. Email us at strangeodditiespodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit our website, strangeodditiespodcast.wordpress.com. Tune in every week, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on the YouTube channel. You can also look us up on Facebook. We have a Facebook page where all the news and information about upcoming guests and anything Strange Oddities Podcast is doing go to our Facebook page, give us a like, and give us a shout. Thanks a lot for tuning in,